Hello, everyone, and welcome to What Needs to Be Done Today Network, other known as WNTBD Today Network. This podcast is sponsored by the MAAT Nation. Much love for our wonderful podcast team and those who have joined us today and those who will view this video later. Today's podcast will be a little different. There won't be a discussion after the video due to the interest of time, but we will definitely have discussion after next week. Today's podcast is It Takes a Crystal Village, where Dr. Melo is still presenting week 2 of 4 on image and colorism. There's a lot of awesome information Dr. Melo is sharing. And after the podcast, it will end immediately, just again in the interest of time, but we'll definitely have time for discussion next week. We want all of your input and your wisdom from all those who are here and would love to share. Without further ado, Dr. Melo, the floor is yours.
Greetings, everyone. This is Dr. Melo. Thank you so much for joining me for week 2 of Image and Colorism. You are all welcome to join our free Crystal Village community and network with us. Just go to MAATCrystalVillage.com. You can access either on your computer or download the app by the same name on an Android phone from the Google Play Store. According to the NAACP, image is everything. I used to think so too until about 40 years ago. When my children were very young, I went to a town meeting in Mesa, Arizona, and spoke a few words before the council on behalf of the referendum to make Martin Luther King Day a legal holiday. One of my key points was that my young son needed a positive male image to look up to. Well, it became a legal holiday, but as my late uncle, my mother's brother, astutely and laughingly pointed out, okay, you got another holiday. Most of y'all have 365 holidays already because you can't find a job. Well, images, especially self-image, how we are portrayed and thought of has been extremely important to the melanated indigenous people. From days of colonialism, forced assimilation, chattel slavery, Jim Crow era, civil rights, affirmative action, human rights, and where are we again? At any rate, we are forever combating, whether consciously or unconsciously, the effects of generation and generations of dehumanization and being thought of and treated as inferior to those considered the dominant class. Now, it's important to note that former slaves like Frederick Douglass, Harriet Tubman, Josiah Henson, Sojourner Truth, and James Walker Hood understood the power and importance of the camera and image. To combat the stereotypes and caricature of our people with their faces nose deep in watermelons, dancing as happy-go-lucky slaves, exaggerated features with slack-jawed expressions, which is how they portrayed us. Okay. That according to Frederick Douglass, these kinds of images reinforce the thought of white supremacy by presenting Black people as simple-minded and subjugated. Gordon Parks was a photojournalist during the 40s, 50s, and 60s, and he said, "I chose my camera as a weapon against all the things I dislike about America: poverty, racism, discrimination." And Gordon Parks, like so many other melanated indigenous people in the past, as we just showed, would deliberately pose for pictures that showed them in a positive light. This was to combat the old degrading images in the newspapers and magazines portraying them as quote unquote Black Sambos, and their skin is dirty and unclean. The degradation done in both print and even radio, where skits were performed by Caucasian voice actors to mimic the so-called broken English of melanated indigenous people. Then came movie theaters and the powerful media of television. So surely things changed then, right? Well, earlier roles in Hollywood consisted of us playing subservient maids, butlers, slaves, and sharecroppers. Well, today we have internet, social media, and amazing technological advances. So surely things have changed, right? Black people may be scoring more substantial parts in television and film, but many continue to play roles that fuel stereotypes. That's a quote from one of the news media. So we're still the magical Black hero who has no inner life or desire of his own, except he exists solely as a support system to the white character. This reinforces the idea that Black people aren't as valuable or as human as their white counterparts. We don't require unique storylines of our own because our lives simply don't matter as much. One example is in the movie The Green Mile. The Black best friend, who typically functions to guide the white characters out of challenging circumstances, is usually a woman. The Black best friend functions to support the heroine, often with sass, as they say, attitude, and a key insight into relationships and life. That was a quote by critic Greg Braxton in the LA Times. And like the magical Black hero, the Black best friend appears not to have much going on in his or her own life, but turns up at exactly the right moment to coach the white character through life. Okay, such as Aisha Taylor with Jennifer Hewitt in The Ghost Whisperer. And remember, they also have The Thugs, where Black men play drug dealers, pimps, con artists, and other criminals, stereotyping the Black man as dangerous and always drawn to illicit activities. Often these films and television shows provide little social context for why more Black men than others are likely to end up in a criminal justice system. And The Thug, as in Training Day. And of all the films, the great films that Denzel Washington, who is an amazing actor, he gets an award for Training Day. And of course, let's not forget the angry Black woman. And make note that when I use the word Black, I'm going by the usual usage. For me, Black, African American, those terms are actually melanated indigenous people. But anyway, the angry Black woman. The Black women are routinely portrayed in television and film as sassy, neck-rolling harpies with major attitude problems. The popularity of reality television shows adds fuel to the fire of the stereotype. So to ensure that programs such as Basketball Wives maintain plenty of drama, often the loudest and most aggressive Black women are featured on these shows. And Black women say these depictions have real world consequences in their love lives and in their careers. And then there's the Jezebel or Sapphire roles that they love to give a lot of melanated women. Halle Berry, an amazing actress who's been in so many films. And she tried to get the movie introducing Dorothy Dandridge on major networks, and she was unable to do so. It became a film on HBO. And interesting, the character of the actual real life character, Dorothy Dandridge, was nominated for an Oscar, but she did not win. Okay. But for Monsters Ball, where they had Halle Berry having the daylight screwed out of her by Billy Bob Thornton, that's the one that they chose after 70 years of not having a melanated woman in a lead role. That's the one that they chose to give her an Oscar for. And even though she did a great acting job in that movie, the thought was in everyone's minds of what were they giving her really giving her the Oscar for. She cried and she said that this moment is so much bigger than her. And I don't take anything away from her accomplishments. It was wonderful for her to receive that. But the degradation that they always put us through. And when I read that there was a lot of scenes that were cut out of the movie that were more sexually explicit, I'm thinking, how much more sexually explicit could it be? No other actress that is her Caucasian counterpart were ever shown on screen doing what they had her do. So with all these images, I still, like so many of us, thought if we just had a quote unquote black face in the White House, if we just had a black Supreme Court judge, if we just had a black mayor, black chief of police, black county supervisor, black governor, black millionaires and black billionaires. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we've had and have all of that and more. These are some faces that you might recognize. Well, I remember before Obama was elected, I tried to warn people that things won't change like you think they will. And you shouldn't just vote for someone just because they are quote unquote black. Of course, not many would listen to me. There were 3 statements that made especially strong impact on my critical mind. The first was, there was a Caucasian woman and she said emphatically, "You don't have to be afraid to vote for Obama. He's not going to do anything for black people." The second was when Obama was appointed. Those who know me, that you know why I say appointed instead of elected, but I won't go into that. But when he was in office, a melanated indigenous young woman exclaimed with joy, and she was very serious about this. She said, "Yeah, we're finally going to get reparations and the standard of beauty is going to change." You know, it's interesting how we have never ever seen anything that is overtly spoken in the movies or anything written that's in the TV, news, media, any place where it actually says what the standard of beauty is. It shows you the power of image, what's deliberately shown, what's deliberately not shown, and in what context is shown. The third was after Obama was in office for his second term, a middle-aged melanated indigenous man in Atlanta at a laundromat said to me, "You know, Obama couldn't do much the first time around, but just wait, we're all going to be walking around with bags full of money." Well, my heart went out to him. I also watched some of the melanated indigenous male commentators after Obama was appointed the first time. They sat back and they crossed their legs in contentment as though we had all finally arrived. Funny how things never really change. This was Booker T. Washington and the National Negro Business League in 1900 in Boston. They had over 600 chapters, and in 1966, they changed the name to National Business League and relocated to Washington, D.C. Apparently, they're still active today. Well, it's a long road from what was called, ironically, the Golden Age, that is 1900 to 1930. Now, let's skip 20 years from that to the 50s and 60s. We're going to take a look at one family, the younger family, they're called, from the 1989 version movie, A Raisin in the Sun. It stars Danny Glover and Esther Rolle. Now, the original version was in 1961 with Sidney Poitier, Claudia O'Neill, and Ruby Dee, which is what the era, what the family was based on. Lorraine Hansberry wrote the play based on the poem Harlem by Langston Hughes. It says, "What happens to a dream deferred? Does it dry up like a raisin in the sun, or fester like a sore and then dry and then run? Does it stink like rotten meat, or crust and sugar over like a syrupy sweet? Maybe it just sags like a heavy load, or does it explode?"
It looks chilly out this morning. Get your car fare and your lunch money. Not a single penny for no caps. You hear me?
Yes.
Oh, Mama makes me so mad sometimes. I don't know what to do. I wouldn't kiss that woman goodbye this morning, not for nothing in this world. Not for nothing in this world. Now, whose little old angry man are you?
Golly, Mom.
Oh, golly, Mama. Now get on out of here, sugar. You're gonna be...
Oh, Mama. Could I please go carry groceries?
Honey, it's starting to get so cold even.
What is it he wants to do?
Go carry groceries at the supermarket.
Oh, well, let him go.
I have to. She won't give me the 50 cents.
Why not?
'Cause we don't have it.
What you tell a boy things like that for? Here, son.
Thanks, Daddy.
In fact, there's another 50 cents. Buy yourself some fruit today, or take a taxi cab to school or something. You better get down now and get to school, man.
Okay. Bye.
That's my boy. Wanna know what I was thinking about in the bathroom this morning?
No.
How come you always try to be so pleasant?
But is there to be pleasant, Val?
You want to know what I was thinking about in the bathroom or not?
I know what you was thinking, Val.
About what me and Willie Harris was talking about last night.
Willie Harris is a good-for-nothing loudmouth.
Anybody who talks to me has got to be a good-for-nothing loudmouth, ain't he? And what do you know about who's a good-for-nothing loudmouth? Now, Charlie Akins was just a good-for-nothing loudmouth, too, wasn't he? When he wanted me to go in the dry cleaning business with it. Now he's grossing $100,000 a year. $100,000. You still call him a good-for-nothing loudmouth?
Oh, Walter Lee.
You're tired, ain't you, baby? You're tired of everything. And me, the boy, the way we live, this beat-up hole, everything, ain't you? So tired, moaning and groaning all the time. But you wouldn't do nothing to help, would you? You couldn't be on my side that long for nothing, could you?
Walter, leave me alone.
A man needs a woman to back him up.
Walter!
Mama would listen to you. You know she'd listen to you more than she do me and Benny. She'd think more of you. Now, all you have to do when you sit down with her and you drink your coffee and talking about things like you do, and you sip your coffee, see, and say easy like that you've been thinking about the deal that Walter Lee's so interested in, about the store and all. And then you sip some more coffee. Like what you're saying ain't really that important to you. And the next thing you know, she's listening good and asking you questions. And when I come home, I can tell her all the details. Oh, baby, this ain't no fly-by-night proposition. I mean, we figured it out, me, Willie, and Bobo.
Bobo?
Yeah. You see, this little liquor store costs $75,000. We figured the initial investment on the place be $30,000. See, that's $10,000 each. Of course, there's a couple of hundred you gotta pay so you don't spend your life waiting on them clowns to get your license approved.
You mean graft?
Oh, don't call it that. You see that? That just goes to show you what a woman understands about the world. Baby, don't nothing happen for you in this world unless you pay somebody off.
Walter, leave me alone. Eat your eggs. They're gonna be cold.
You see that? Man says this woman, I got a dream. This woman says, eat your eggs. Man says, I gotta take hold of this here world, baby. And a woman will say, eat your eggs and go to work. Man says, I gotta change my life. I'm choking to death, baby. And this woman says, your eggs is getting cold.
Walter, that ain't none of our money.
This morning, I'm looking in the mirror, and I'm thinking about it. I'm 35 years old. I've been married 11 years, and I got a boy who sleeps in the living room. And all I got to give him is nothing but stories about how rich white people live.
Eat your eggs, Walter.
Damn them eggs, damn all the eggs that ever was.
Then go to work.
You see that? I'm trying to talk to you about me, and all you can say is eat them eggs and go to work.
Honey, you never say nothing new. I listen to you every day, every night, every morning. You never say nothing new. So you would rather be Mr. Arnold than be his chauffeur? So I would rather be living in Buckingham Palace.
That's just what's wrong with the colored women in the world. Don't understand about building the men up, making them feel like they're somebody, like they can do something.
There are colored men who do things.
Yeah, no thanks to the colored woman.
Well, being a colored woman, I guess I can't help myself none.
Yeah, we just a group of men tied to a race of women with small minds. No, Willie. No. Willie, don't do it, man. Please don't do it. Not with that money, man. No. 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 Oh, God, don't let it be. Don't let it be true. I can't. Man, I trusted you. I put my life in your hands. Man, that money was made from my father's flesh.
I'm sorry, Walter. I had my life staked on this deal, too.
Now, believe it or not, there was a happy ending in that movie. The younger family were, even though it was into a predominantly white neighborhood that they were discriminated against, they stood their ground and they were moved into their home. And her, Walter Lee, who was the father in the family, basically coming into his own and reinstating his ethos as a man, okay, the right image for his young son. Okay. And today there's a success story when it comes to an entrepreneur. And you can see her, the pictures. This is Fawn Weaver. She's 49 years old. She's a CEO of a $1 billion company, Grant Sidney Incorporated, and that started in 2017. And she co-founded the Uncle Nearest Premium Whiskey to honor Nathan Nearest Green, a former slave who was the first known master distiller, or moonshiner to the layperson, who taught Jack Daniels the secret to making whiskey. Now, we do honor her accomplishments. However, I do question her choice of commodity because its harmful effects on people. Liquor is still a drug, no matter how you look at it. Now, Fawn's not yet a billionaire. That is her own personal net worth. However, we do have quite a bit of billionaires. In fact, we have 26 of them. Now, keep in mind, I notice you know a lot of these faces here. Some you may not know. There's Robert Smith. There's one on the second row next to Tyler Perry to the right. This gentleman is actually the CEO of the Calendly company that we use when we set up our one-on-one, when I used, and I got that from Brother Mark, to set up for the one-on-one meetings. Some of the others you notice with the right to the left of Magic Johnson, up there on the second row, Sheila Johnson, okay. She actually is was married, she was divorced now, to Robert L. Johnson on the last row to the left, to the right of Michael Jordan. He actually is the one who co-founded with his wife, his then wife, Sheila, the BET. And they sold that for a few billion dollars. But even though her net worth is not as much as his, she actually owns a lot of resorts and hotels in Florida and a lot of other things. And these are representative of most of the ones who are here in the U.S., living in the U.S. We actually, the one to the farthest right on the third row, we know that's Sean Combs, or better known as Puff Daddy. I left him on there because he was a billionaire up until 3 years ago, but we know the different things that have happened to him, and he is now only worth 300 billion. So when I did totals, I didn't add him in the totals. And these are the Black billionaires that are considered biracial or multiracial: Alex Karp, Rihanna, Tiger Woods, and Michael Lee Chin. And they actually lump all of us together when they use the term quote unquote Black billionaires. Those of us in America and those in Africa, okay, because after all, they consider us African-Americans, okay? I won't go over all of these, but one, the first gentleman at the top in the first row, Aliko Dangote, he actually is worth 23.2 billion. Next to him, Mohammed Alamundi, 10.5 billion. And down on the very end, on the second row to the farthest right, I have to recognize Folarunsho Alakija. She is actually worth 1 billion, okay? One of the females who worth a billion net worth. Now, mind you, this net worth is not their companies, it's their own personal net worth. On the bottom row, Isabel dos Santos. I left her on here for now. However, she was a billionaire. However, it's kind of skeptical right now because she is actually being charged with embezzlement. Okay. So I didn't include her in any of the totals. But for the white billionaires, as you can see listed here, and the white billionaires, these are all those who are in America. Okay. That's what I did here. And you can see I went from the highest to the lowest, starting with Elon Musk at 395.6, all the way down to the lowest, Carlos Slim Helu at 91.6 billion. Now, the total of all 26 Black billionaires combined total net worth, mind you, we're taking into account the Americans and Africans together. So there are 26 of them. Their total combined is 120.5 billion. The total of all 11 of the white, quote unquote, white billionaires combined total net worth is 1.85 trillion. Okay. This means there are more than 2 times as many quote unquote Black billionaires in America and Africa, that is 44%, than white quote unquote white billionaires in America alone, 56% of that total. But the white billionaires, quote unquote, have almost 15 times as much total net worth in just America, okay, 93%, as the quote unquote Black billionaires in America and Africa, which is only 7%. This is a chart that shows that 3% of the U.S. businesses were Black or African American owned. They call us Black, sometimes African American, in 2022. And I won't say a lot about this because next week when we get into colorism, we're also going to speak about some of the challenges, including racism, that some of the quote unquote Black owned businesses encounter. But in 2022, there were almost 195,000 U.S. firms with the majority Black or African American ownership, according to the statistics. Now, despite the growth, the majority business owners remain only up about 3%, as you can see there. And as far as, because they lumped all the billionaires with the those living in America and those living in Africa, most of them were in Nigeria. But as far as the number of actual African businesses that were African owned, whether they were in Angola or West Africa, South Africa, wherever, they total 67 million. And that number seems like a lot, but there's some other differences that we need to talk about, and we'll get into next week. These next few slides, I won't go over each one, but you can go back through the videos later and you can pause and you can take a look at these numbers. I'll just go, I did the comparison between the black men and white men, the comparison of black men and white men, and this has to do with the median earnings, okay? Comparison of Asian men and Asian women, comparison of white men and white women, and comparison of Hispanic men and Hispanic women, and over to us, comparison of black men and black women, okay? And of course, you know that the men always, as far as the annual earnings, are much higher than the women, no matter what race you're referring to, okay? That's just the nature of the system that we live in, okay? But our earnings are comparatively lower than the other races, except for they have listed here as Hispanic, who seem to be a little bit lower than ours. But remember, these are all statistics, and not everything is always reported. This is the category of the expenditures and what we spend our money on. We have what the average is for the black households, but then we have for the high income black households compared to the low income black households. I remember a cousin of mine told me a long time ago, she said that you'd be surprised at the differences as far as the incomes. We have black people who actually do have money, okay? And there's just the differences that exist. And sometimes we're not always aware of that, but it does exist. Remind you, you can go back and stop on each one of these, and just for you to peruse and see what we spend on the different areas that we spend things on, okay? And this shows from 2010 to 2012. And I just want to make special note when you look at this, that for housing, there's the biggest amount was we spent on housing, okay, compared to, if you look at, and I think then the next one is transportation and tobacco and smoking supplies, personal insurance and pensions, okay, entertainment, healthcare, actually healthcare before entertainment. Education is a very small piece. Miscellaneous expenditures, there's our cash contributions. I want you to look at one that said like the personal care. Now this was 2010 to 2012, and I want you to look at that personal care is a very slim piece right there, very small percentage during that time. What we actually as melanated people, what we spend our money on. Oh, and also the alcoholic beverages comparatively was very, very small. Okay? But keep in mind, I want you to keep in mind that personal care piece for a reason. Now, this is Anissa Roberts, okay? She is an award-winning journalist, copywriter, and editor, okay? She's written in the USA Today Network, the Spruce Ramsey Solutions, Davy Ramsey Company, and so forth, okay? Now, she's originally from Trinidad and Tobago, okay? She earned her BA in journalism from the University of Kentucky and resides in Nashville, Tennessee area, okay? And I'm telling you all that for a specific reason, okay? She is one that has one of the quotes she gave. She says, Black people are most likely to consume products but are financially behind white and Latino counterparts. And that's according to research. While most Americans report feeling as though they live paycheck to paycheck, minorities are most likely to face ongoing wealth gaps compared to their white peers. Okay. And if you notice, this is the categories where the percentage of Black spending is greater in proportion to their population. The population in America is 14%. And if you notice, look at the top there, the ethnic hair and beauty aids, 54.4 million, okay, compared to the total spend, okay, in America of 83.3. And so our percent of total spend that's contributed to us is 85%. Then look at the women's fragrances, feminine hygiene, men's toiletries, personal soap, and bath needs. Okay. Now, there was an article that's called Race and Consumption, Black and White Disparities in Household Spending from 2017. And they examined the consumption of Black consumption from a structural perspective. And they argued that the Black household faces a unique constraints that restricts their ability to acquire the necessary goods and services. Okay. Most of the researchers focus on earnings or their wealth accumulation, and they miss the disparities because the disparities arise in the process of spending one's resources. They found that Black households tend to have lower levels of total spending than their white counterparts, and that the disparities tend to persist across income levels. Now, mind you, these areas that we just mentioned that you see on the screen are a little bit different. Okay, those are mostly in personal care. But for goods and services, for certain other necessary items, they found there were three factors. Okay, that is why the gap in the racial spending. It was access to credit. Okay, retail and service desertification. That's like the food deserts. They exist when the retail stores and outlets and they move and relocate when neighborhoods become more populated with low income and segregated majority Black households. Okay. The retail deserts have been found for grocery stores, banks, healthcare providers, gas stations, pharmacies, and clothing outlets, okay, and so forth. Then the third is consumer discrimination. The biased treatment of non-white customers in retail and service settings, such as being denied service or steered toward lower quality alternatives. Okay. What era are we in again? Okay. And this is from the blackwallstreet.org. Okay. They show about the Black spending index by industry. Now, you won't find housing on here because they just have different industries, but it's interesting if you look on here that the beauty and personal care is a huge chunk. Okay. Actually, one of the biggest industries, and that's today. Right. Now, despite the gains of all the monies and the millionaires and billionaires that we have, this disparity in the buying power is distributed and leveraged, okay? And here's one of the reasons: the vast majority of Black consumer dollars are spent outside of the Black community, which limits the economic benefits for Black-owned businesses and families. Studies show that money circulates within the Black communities far less frequently than it does in others, such as in the Asian and Jewish communities, where the dollars are reinvested multiple times before leaving. This disparity underscores the need for intentional spending to build lasting wealth. Well, those who know me, I have a different solution for that. Well, we're looking at these different household charts. Okay, this one is for the household unsecured debt holding rates. Okay, the white non-Hispanic householders, they group together. Okay, those are represented in red, and the Black householders in blue. And you see there's a huge gap. So the unsecured debts, okay, credit card, store bills, student loan, education related expenses, medical debts, and so in unsecured debts. And this one, the distribution of household net worth by amount of net worth and the race of the householder. Okay, so you can see that we still lag behind our white and non-Hispanic householder counterparts. Okay, and of course this one is the median value of assets for the households. Notice that wealth is the value of the assets owned minus the value of your debts that you owe. Okay, it provides the economic security, serving as a source of liquidity during times of unstable income or in the face of unexpected expenses and opportunities for upward mobility. So how we saw households with a white non-Hispanic householder were 10 times wealthier than those with a Black householder, and that was in 2021. Okay. Now, according to research last year, okay, we're talking in 2024, Black consumers spent almost $1 trillion, and they expect the number to grow to around 1.98 trillion before the year is over. Now, we've seen this screen before, but I took you back here for a reason, okay? One thing that the research finds about us as Black consumers, quote unquote Black consumers, we're much more likely to seek out and place emphasis on brands that are trustworthy, have a clear social mission, appeal to our cultural values, and generally have credibility among the Black community. There is a real emphasis on clean and or healthy products that are priced well for good values. So the research found that for Black consumers, key buying factors are quality, customized products, or the ability to customize, and again, the credibility of brands. And let's take this out of the marketing concept for just a moment and look at it from a sociological viewpoint. First of all, the focus is that we call Black consumers, okay? We are called Black consumers, not producers. Second, we seek out brands, even though we want those brands to be trustworthy. That is, have a good reputation, appeal to our cultural values, which are what? Okay. Do we even know what our culture is? Next, clean and healthy products priced well for good value, good quality, and can customize them to our liking. Lastly, they say Black consumers are more heavily weighted in the trendsetter segment, which includes around 30% of us, which means we are people who discover new products and services and proactively share them with our peers. In other words, we want to look good, smell good, and be able to show off how smart or how great a purchase we made for ourselves. In other words, they cater a lot to our ego. Now, we are people who are, for so many reasons, constantly trying to compensate for having been made to feel and treated as though we are inferior for hundreds of generations, okay? So let's go back a few years to see if there was or is any difference. Before we get to that, just wanted to put this on the screen to let you know that this complete list of Black consumer spending statistics, it's worth taking a look at, because you find some very interesting stats that they compiled on us, and I will make this available in the Crystal Village with the rest of the cited articles and the whole bibliography.
Here is what sales psychologists have to say about selling to the Negro.
The secret of selling to the Negro is expressed in one word. That word is recognition. Now, there's nothing unusual about that. People want to be recognized. They need recognition. That's basic in all of us. But perhaps because he's had so little of it, the Negro needs even more. He needs to feel important and appreciated. This need is a very real and important one. It shows up even in many of the Negro's shopping habits. Anyone who sells or wants to sell to the Negro customer should know about some of these habits. Three habits in particular play a big part in every sales transaction. To begin with, most Negroes buy by brand. They ask for products by name. They're quick to turn down off-brands. You see, for a long time, the Negro has been sold a lot of shoddy, second-class merchandise. So now he asks for name brands in order to make sure he gets his money's worth. Buying by brand, that's the first important Negro buying habit. Now for the second. The Negro buys good quality merchandise. Symbols of quality and prestige are very important to the Negro customer. This woman, for example, is buying fine crystalware, but she is also buying the admiration and approval of her friends and relatives. It's a well-known fact that many Negro customers are influenced by the opinions of others. What their friends may think of a certain item often decides whether or not the sale is made. So remember, the Negro buys quality merchandise. That's the second important point. And here's the third thing to remember when selling to a Negro customer. When he specifically asks for one thing, don't try to sell him something else. Don't try to switch him at the point of sale. If you do, he'll probably react something like this.
Doesn't he think I've got the money to pay for it?
There's a reason for this reaction. Again, because he's had experience with cheap merchandise, the Negro resents being offered a substitute. He wants to be sold on quality, not price. The Negro buys by brand, he buys quality, and he doesn't like to be switched at point of sale. These are the keys to selling the Negro customer. Another point. The Negro family does things together, as a group. The family works as a unit. It lives as a unit, and it buys as a unit. When you sell to one member, you many times sell to all. It's also true that many places of entertainment are still closed to the Negro. So he spends more of his money for the things that are available to him, often for items that are considered luxuries. Another trait of the Negro market is the fact that it is a pre-sold market. We know that the Negro buys by brand, and he buys the brands that he knows something about. Where does the Negro buyer get this information? We know that Negro customers are turning more and more to the publications that are tailored specifically to their needs, that give them the news and the information that they want to read about. Many leading businessmen and companies already know this. That's why so many of them are taking this direct, sure route of reaching the Negro customer. The vice president of advertising of the Drew & Watch Company, for example, says this.
In many important cities throughout the United States, Negroes are important customers of the credit jeweler. Therefore, it seemed that Ebony magazine would be a very important advertising medium for us. We would say it was very well received, and from our viewpoint, a very successful campaign.
So a discussion on image and self-image would not be complete without the annual quote-unquote image-making Met Gala 2025. The Met Gala was formerly called the Costume Institute Benefit, and it's the annual fundraising festival held on the first Monday in May for the benefit of the Metropolitan Museum of Art. It's this Costume Institute located in Manhattan. Okay. The Met Gala is popularly regarded as the world's most prestigious and glamorous fashion event. The Met Gala itself, the Metropolitan Museum of Art itself, okay, it's a tax-exempt nonprofit 501c3 and the largest art museum in the U.S. with more than 2 million works of art curated over 17 departments, displayed at 2 locations in New York. The reported revenue was $536 million, okay? Their expenses, $321 million. So all the attendees at the Met Gala are given the opportunity to express themselves through fashion, all in the name of art. An invitation is highly sought after. Guests are expected to curate their fashions to match the theme of the annual event, generally what they call haute couture. Personalities are perceived to be culturally relevant to contemporary society amongst the various professional spheres, including those in fashion, film, television, music, theater, business, sports, social media, and politics. They're invited to attend the Met Gala. In other words, you're invited to pay $75,000 for your ticket, or if you have a table of 10, $350,000. And the marks of the opening of the Costume Institute's annual fashion exhibit, that's hosted. Many of the attendees are depicted on the covers and pages of Vogue magazine. Now, each year there's a specific theme of that year's Costume Institute exhibition, which sets the tone for the formal attire of the night. Now, fashion executive Anna Wintour, who is the editor-in-chief of Vogue, has chaired or co-chaired the Met Gala since 1995. And for the last 20 years, they've had an honorary chair of the event. So far, there have been two melanated people who have chaired the event, honorary chairs, that is. Beyonce was given the honor in 2013, and this year the honorary chair is none other than billionaire LeBron James. Our people seem to relate to the theme and fall into it very well. Black superfine, the term dandyism, basically, that they actually use. The term dandy was supposed to have been something that's excellent or first rate, okay? But the first records of that use of that word is not what a lot of our people think, okay? It goes back to the 1800s. There was a song that they created called Dandy Jim of Caroline. It was a popular minstrel song from around 1843, 1844. And like many of the minstrel songs, they were performed by Caucasian people in blackface and written in what they call the faux African-American dialect that contains racist slurs and stereotypes, okay? And in that song, the Jim in the Dandy Jim of Caroline, he's a black man who's depicted as handsome and well-dressed in a way that's intended to be humorous based on a racist notion that fancy dress is too high class for black people. In other words, they were making a mockery of him, okay? But we had slaves or former slaves, as you see depicted here. It says for generations, the black man dressing in stylish fashion was not just about looking sharp. It was against the backdrop of centuries of enslavement and discrimination, where people of African descent were continually stripped of their dignity and denied personal choices as basic as to what to wear. Style became a potent form of cultural defiance and self-expression, as we saw before with Gordon Parks and the camera and so forth. Sometimes it was enslaved people co-opting bits of finery for their Sunday church clothes. And I always wondered where that came from. Is that with a lot of us who go back when going to church, my mother and father and everyone was, you had certain things you had to wear. You get dressed up real nice for your Sunday go to meeting clothes, okay? So, and I always wondered where that came from. And now I know, okay? But they had certain dress and certain things. They were dressed in pantaloons and other stylish military garb. Like the gentleman up there is a black general from the French army, okay? There were people like we saw before with Frederick Douglass. You see him again here, and then also with the W.E.B. Du Bois to his left. They were dignified, tailored wardrobes that telegraphed flair and confidence and freedom, okay? And then with W. Du Bois, he was, quote unquote, they said, the dandier of the two, of he and Frederick Douglass. And he was flaunting and flourishing with like gloves and walking sticks and top hats, okay? He's not shown with that, but there is a gentleman at the very top who is shown in that garb, okay? But what is our culture? We always talk about Black culture but when you call yourselves, quote unquote, Black, what is that? Is there really Black culture. I mean, there's a video that a young woman put out about Black culture, and when you look at that video, I still ask that same question: is that our culture, or are we just referring to our expectations of the creativity, the talents, and gifts that we bring to everything that we are a part of? Okay. One thing that Obama said, and those who are big supporters of his, and believe it or not, I was one of them, okay, when he was interviewed and he was dubbed as the first Black president of the United States, and some people miss what he said. He said, his comment to that host, he said that I don't think of myself as the first Black president because Black has no standing in law. So we as a people seem to be content with our images and symbols such as grave sites, tombstones and memoriams, street names and boulevards and statutes. We love what caters to our egos. Never mind that we're killing each other, brutally beating and abusing each other, not doing anything to stop human trafficking or of our babies and of our women. But let's spend a great deal of our money to smell good, look good, and buy the latest brand names. Never mind that we don't own them, and then show off what is Black, super fine and dandy, instead of doing something about what is Black and missing. We should never have done the one thing and left the other undone. So this is my paraphrase to what you see on the screen now. Matthew 23:23. Well, thank you all. I know this has been longer than was expected, but I just want to say that, believe it or not, and contrary to popular belief, we have not yet arrived. We're still trying to compensate for being made to feel less than and feel inferior to what is considered the dominant culture and the standard. And even so, that we have begun, whether consciously or unconsciously, to become complicit in perpetuating our own mental slavery. Next week, we're going to take a look into how this has manifested itself in the form of colorism, okay, and how it affects our melanated youth, and especially melanated women. In addition, we'll give the actual definition of the words race, racism, and what being a racist really is. Some of us have a view or an opinion and have not really sat down and actually researched what those words mean. And then we're going to take a look at, once you know that definition, is it possible for reverse racism, reverse discrimination to occur? God bless you. Thank you.
Absolutely fantastic. Thank you so much, Dr. Malo, for that wonderful presentation. Dr. Malo is laying an awesome foundation for us. Everything will definitely come together in weeks 3 and 4. And we will have time for discussion after next week's presentation, because we definitely want to hear from you all. So join us next week for part 3 of 4 on image and colorism. Thank you again, Dr. Malo, our wonderful podcast team, our amazing tribal members who I see here, and all of you beautiful people for watching and those that will watch. Peace and love, everyone. Have a fabulous week. We'll see you next week.